Today's case is about a series of brutal murders took place in Baiyin, Gansu province, China. 11 women were killed. This crime was so horrifying and left deep scars on dozens of families and haunted the entire community for decades. Now, we go back to where it all began. Let's rewind the clock to a Thursday afternoon, June 26, 1988. That day marked the start of something unimaginable. It was late spring, and the temperatures were beginning to climb. At around 5:00 p.m. on Yongfeng Street in Baiyin District, a man stopped by his younger sister's house after work. This was part of his usual routine. He planned to help her fetch some water, but as soon as he stepped into the yard, something felt off. There was an odd smell in the air, and strangely, there was no sign of his sister. He heard a radio playing from inside her room, so he walked over, knocked gently, and pushed open the door. What he saw froze him in place. The room had been ransacked. His sister lay dead next to the bed. Her throat had been slashed, and blood was everywhere. Panicked, he screamed, "Murder!" and rushed out to get help. But in those days, most homes in China didn't have telephones. It took him quite a while to reach the nearest police station and report the crime. At 6:00 p.m., the police finally arrived on the scene and began their investigation. The victim's shirt had been pulled up, exposing her upper body. She was naked from the waist down. A bloody handprint, left by a right hand, was found inside her thigh. The fingerprint from the index finger was especially clear. Another print was discovered on the doorknob. Unfortunately, the footprints at the scene were too faint to identify. Though the house showed signs of a struggle, nothing appeared to be stolen. The autopsy revealed she had been stabbed 26 times. There were defensive wounds on her hands, indicating she had fought back. However, the victim had not been sexually assaulted. Time of death was estimated to be around 3:00 p.m. The victim was Bai, a 23-year-old factory worker at Tiantan factory. She lived with her mother and younger brother. Her personality was gentle and quiet. She loved dancing, was very tidy, and always wore her favorite pair of white canvas shoes. That day, her factory shift ended early. After lunch, she went home alone to take a nap. Her brother was at work, and her mother had gone to her older brother's house to help care for his children. This wasn't an isolated place. Yongfeng Street was in a residential area, mostly inhabited by factory workers and their families. Everyone knew each other, and doors were often left unlocked. That afternoon, Bai didn't lock hers either. That simple act would cost her everything. Police believe the killer sneaked into the house while Bai was sleeping, possibly intending to steal. But when she woke up and saw him, he panicked and then slaughtered her. The volume of the radio was turned up so loud that no one outside could hear her scream. Police speculated that the killer may have known the layout of the house. He could have been someone familiar with the area. The faint footprints at the scene suggested he had cleaned up and left calmly. To those who knew her, Bai was a beautiful, stylish young woman. Because of her white shoes, locals called her the white-shoed flower of the factory. Some believed she may have been killed due to jealousy. Even police dogs were brought in. They followed the trail to a nearby bus stop, but then lost the scent completely. From there, the trail went cold. Fingerprints from suspects with prior records were checked, but none matched. Bai's death shattered her once happy family. Her boyfriend spiraled into depression and eventually moved away. Her younger brother fell into mental illness and died by suicide 2 years later. Her parents' marriage collapsed under the weight of grief, and a few years later, her mother passed away from a stroke. And this was only the beginning. 6 years passed. Just when the memory of Bai's case began to fade, terror returned to Baiyin. It was Wednesday, July 27, 1994 at 2:55 p.m. Inside the dormitory of Baiyin Electric Power Company, an 18-year-old part-time worker named Shi was found dead, murdered in her own bedroom. The dormitory was a 4-story building, mostly occupied by company employees. Men and women lived on alternating floors. Shi's room was on the 3rd floor, north side, which she shared with a roommate. Most of the people on her floor were co-workers. Everyone knew each other. There were security guards stationed nearby, so when she was alone in the room that day, she didn't bother locking the door. It was a mistake. At the scene, blood had sprayed all over the walls, yet her clothes were still intact. In the wash basin nearby, there was bloody water, likely left by the killer as he cleaned himself up. Footprints revealed the killer had worn flat-soled canvas shoes, about 25 centimeters long and 9 centimeters wide at the front, tapering to 4.5 centimeters at the heel. A slanted fingerprint was found on the doorknob. The autopsy showed multiple stab wounds all over her body, causing massive blood loss. However, there were no signs of sexual assault. It seemed the killer had launched a sudden, violent attack. Based on the level of rage in the attack, investigators suspected a grudge, possibly revenge. Shi's older brother worked as a security guard. That made police wonder, could the killer have been targeting the brother? Was this payback? The investigation expanded to everyone working at the Baiyin Electric Power Company. Police interviewed nearly all employees, but no suspect matched the fingerprint. The case was frustratingly cold. And because this murder took place 6 years after Bai's case, police couldn't say for sure whether the two were connected. But the horror wasn't over. Another 4 years passed. Then, on June 16, 1998, the third victim appeared. Her name was Yang, 29 years old, living on Shengli Street in Baiyin District. She was murdered in her own home. Her body was found lying on the bed, completely unclothed. A pool of blood had gathered in the wash basin nearby. This time, the autopsy revealed that Yang had been sexually assaulted before her death. Cause of death? Her carotid artery was cut. She had likely died 3 days before her body was discovered. But just 3 days later, another murder struck. Deng, 27 years old, living on Shuishuan Street, was found dead in her own house. Her shirt had been pulled up to her chest. Her pants had been yanked down to her knees. She too had been sexually assaulted. 2 murders in 3 days. Both victims were violated, both mutilated. Both cases showed signs of a sexual serial killer. The randomness was what made it terrifying. The killer didn't seem to have a clear target. He didn't know the women. They didn't know each other. He picked them by chance. Police realized they were facing a serial killer. And worse, a cold-blooded one who operated without a pattern. He didn't stalk at night. He struck in broad daylight, on weekdays, when most people were at work, when the streets were quiet, when homes were empty. It was the perfect time to strike. Women in Baiyin began to grow afraid. People reported strange experiences to the police. Some said that when they were home alone during the day, they heard urgent knocks on the door. But if a man answered, the person outside would quickly say, "Oops, wrong house," and leave. Police believed this was the killer's trick to identify lone women at home. He would knock first, check who was inside, and if the coast was clear, force his way in. Despite undercover patrols and community alerts, it felt like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. And the nightmare was only beginning. 6 months after the second double murder, in 998, tragedy struck again. This time, it wasn't a young woman. It was a child. Miu Miu, the 8-year-old daughter of Tang, a worker at the Baiyin Electric Power Company, was found dead inside their home. What made this even more chilling? The crime scene was less than 50 meters from where she, the second victim, had been murdered. That afternoon, Tang returned home from work and noticed his daughter wasn't around. On the living room table, there was a cup of tea, as if someone had stopped by. He assumed a visitor had come, and maybe Miu Miu had gone out with them. Thinking nothing of it, he went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. But as he passed by his daughter's room, he noticed the bed was a mess. Then he opened the wardrobe and found her. She was naked, strangled with a leather cord, and lifeless. Police found a fingerprint on the cup left on the table. The autopsy confirmed that Miu Miu had been sexually assaulted, then strangled to death. That cup of tea fooled investigators into thinking the killer was a family acquaintance. But he wasn't. 5 months later, in late 1998, the 6th victim appeared. Kui, a 23-year-old factory worker from Dongshan Street, was found murdered at home. She was completely naked, her throat cut, and her body mutilated. There were 22 stab wounds to her chest, arms, and genitals. Some body parts were even cut off and never recovered. At this point, detectives noticed a chilling pattern. All 4 murders in 1998 shared the same disturbing hallmarks. The violence had escalated. Each time, it was a female victim, attacked in her home during the day. The bodies were left in terrifying conditions. Many had been violated or dismembered. But what haunted the police most? There was no connection between any of the victims. They didn't know each other. They lived in different neighborhoods. Their only common trait: they were all women. Police guessed the killer chose to strike during work hours. Most factory workers were out. It made homes easier to enter, and neighbors less likely to witness anything. Several locals came forward with creepy encounters. Some said they had been home alone and heard intense knocking. But when a male voice responded, the person outside walked away. This confirmed the fear. The killer was knocking on doors to hunt, trying to find women who were alone. After these continuous murders, pressure on law enforcement mounted. Police reviewed every detail they had and began narrowing down their suspect list. They created a massive pool, nearly 100,000 men, born between 1966 and 1974, living in Baiyin district. One by one, they investigated them. Still, they found nothing. Then came the rumors. Whispers filled the streets of Baiyin. People said the killer was obsessed with women in red, especially those with long hair and high heels. The story went that his ex-girlfriend used to dress that way, and after she died, he snapped. Whether true or not, the rumors spread like wildfire. Women in Baiyin stopped wearing red. They cut their hair short. The fear was so widespread, it even affected schools. Some schools had to adjust dismissal times, and parents began escorting their children home every day. Despite countless efforts, police were still empty-handed. Then, 2 years passed, and the killer returned. It was November 20, 2000. After 2 years of silence, the killer struck again. This time, the victim was La, a 28-year-old woman working at Baiyin Cotton Mill. She was found dead inside her home. Her throat had been slit. Her pants were pulled down to her knees, and her hands had been severed. Only 2 months later, another woman was murdered. On January 22, 2001, Zhang, 28 years old, a nurse at the Baiyin District Center for Disease Control, was found dead in her home on Shuishuan Street. But this case was different. Zhang didn't die immediately. She fought back. She struggled. In her final moments, she managed to grab her phone and call for help. She was rushed to the hospital. But the blood loss was too severe. She died before dawn. Before taking her last breath, Zhang whispered a crucial clue. Her attacker was a local man with long hair. That alone shook the entire investigation. And before police even had time to regroup, another woman was killed. Just one day after Zhang died, on January 23, 2001, Chang, a 20-year-old nursing intern, was found murdered in a motel in Baiyin district. She had been assaulted and killed in eerily similar fashion. The killings had become so frequent, so brutal, that law enforcement escalated the case to top priority. These weren't isolated incidents anymore. This was now officially listed as a serial rape murder case, one of the most dangerous and high-profile in modern Chinese history. From 1988 to 2001, the crimes had spanned 13 years. Multiple jurisdictions were involved, dozens of officers, hundreds of suspects, and still no trace of the killer. In fact, he wasn't done yet. By early 2001, tensions were at their peak in Baiyin. People locked their doors even during the day. Families refused to leave their children home alone. But the killer hadn't stopped. He had only become more careful. Then came the closest anyone had gotten to catching him. One night, in 2001, a female factory worker had just finished her night shift. She was walking home alone. The streets were quiet, eerily empty. When she arrived at her front door, she felt it. That strange sensation, like someone was behind her. She turned around. A man was following her. Her heart pounded. She thought of all the murders over the past decade. Was it him? The moment she stepped into her home, the man lunged forward, trying to shove her inside. But she was ready. She twisted her body, pushed him back with all her strength, and slammed the door shut. Breathless, she leaned against the door, listening. Silence. Then, she turned toward the window, and saw his face. He was smiling at her from outside the glass. A wide, unnatural smile. She couldn't breathe. Her hands were shaking. She dialed her husband immediately, barely able to speak through the panic. Her husband rushed home. Only then did she feel safe again. But just as they began to calm down, the face appeared again. The man was back, smiling at them from the same window. This time, the husband called the police immediately. When officers arrived, the man had already vanished. For the next 3 days, police worked tirelessly to recreate a composite sketch based on the couple's testimony. Patrols were increased. Flyers were posted. Hopes were high. But then, another body surfaced. On September 9th, 2002, in a remote motel in Daolei village, Zhou, a 25-year-old woman, was found dead in bed, alone in a third-floor room. Her shirt had been pulled up, her body exposed, and her carotid artery slashed. She had been sexually assaulted. Time of death was estimated 4 days before discovery. And just like that, the killer vanished. No more murders. No more sightings. No more anything. It was as if he had never existed. From 1988 to 2002, 10 women were murdered. Some assaulted, others mutilated. The youngest was only 8 years old. Many had body parts removed. Some were found posed. Others were left as if nothing had happened. The city of Baiyin had been haunted for 14 years. And now, it was silent. But no one felt safe. Because monsters don't always stay in the shadows forever. Though the killings had stopped, the city of Baiyin remained gripped by fear. 10 women gone, one after another. No witnesses, no suspects, no clear motive. The investigation was stuck in time. But far away, in Baotou, Inner Mongolia, a new murder caught the attention of investigators in Gansu province. A woman had been killed under strikingly similar circumstances. Police believed this new murder might be connected to the Baiyin serial killings. At the direction of the Ministry of Public Security, law enforcement from Gansu and Inner Mongolia joined forces. They began to compare fingerprints and DNA between the two regions. And finally, they had something. The case from Baotou, which had occurred in March 1997, was a match. The same killer had struck both in Baotou and in Baiyin. It was the same man. The two provinces officially merged the investigations, naming it the Gansu Inner Mongolia Serial Rape and Murder Case 805. A special task force was created, Task Force 805. But they were still fighting blind. All they had were biological samples, DNA, fingerprints, footprints, partial blood traces, left behind at the scenes. The killer had never tried to hide them. But at the time, DNA technology in China was still underdeveloped. They couldn't do much with it. The only lead was fingerprints. So the task force cast an even wider net. They now began investigating men born between 1958 and 1975, expanding the suspect pool by another 100,000 people. Police officers fanned out across China, collecting samples. At that point, over 7,000 officers were dispatched just to match a single fingerprint. They found a man whose print seemed similar. He had been traced across Gansu, Guangdong, Zhejiang, and other provinces. But in the end, it wasn't a match. The real killer had slipped away again. Decades had passed. The victims had been buried, their families broken. But the case was never closed. In 2011, 23 years after the first murder, something changed. With help from the Ministry of Public Security, Baiyin City Police established a DNA forensics lab. Slowly but surely, they began mastering advanced DNA techniques, specifically the YSDR test. Here's what makes it different. Women carry XX chromosomes, but men carry XY. The Y chromosome is passed unchanged from father to son, generation after generation. This meant that if investigators found a match to someone's Y chromosome, they didn't just find one man, they found an entire male bloodline. Starting in March 2015, Gansu police launched a new approach. They combined fingerprint analysis with Y chromosome DNA screening. They collected blood and fingerprint samples from anyone with a criminal record and entered everything into a growing database. By then, they had stored over 230,000 fingerprints and 100,000 blood samples. And then, they ran the YSTR match. That's when it happened. In August 2016, a forensic technician noticed something strange. One blood sample had 27 identical locus genetic markers, matching the Y chromosome from the Baiyin crime scenes. The sample belonged to a man named Gao Muming. Years earlier, Gao had been arrested for a minor offense and had his blood drawn at the Renmin Road police station in Baiyin. His hometown? Qingcheng Town, in Yuzhong County, part of Lanzhou City, Gansu Province. Investigators raced there. They quickly identified 17 men with the surname Gao and tested each one. 16 of them had Y chromosomes matching the killer. Tracing the family lineage, police narrowed it down to one branch, the 12th generation of the Gao family, descending from an ancestor named Gao Zuji. And finally, after 28 years of darkness, they had a name, Gao Chengyong. It was the morning of August 26. Two plainclothes detectives quietly approached a small store inside an empty school campus. Summer vacation meant the school was closed. The shop, called Student Supplies Store of Baiyin Industrial School, had bright red posters on its windows. Inside, one man sat quietly, alone. 51-year-old Gao Chengyong. When the officers identified themselves and asked for his ID, he didn't run. He didn't resist. He just nodded, calmly handing over his documents. At the Baiyin City Police Department, in the interrogation room, Gao confessed. He admitted to 11 murders, including the one from May 2001, which had long remained unconfirmed. From 1988 to 2002, Gao had raped, murdered, and mutilated women across Baiyin and Baotou. He was the man the city feared for 3 decades. Gao was born in November 1964 in Yuzhong County, Lanzhou City, Gansu Province. At 24, he committed his first murder. He had been intending to steal. Riding his bicycle around Baiyin, he passed by Bai's house and heard the radio blaring. He peeked in and saw her sleeping. He slipped inside, hoping to rob her. But when she woke up, he panicked and slashed her throat. That same year, his first son was born. By 2002, Gao had grown older, his health declining. His desire to kill faded. Both his sons were excelling in school. He didn't want to ruin their futures, so he stopped. He moved from Yuzhong to Baiyin, so his son could attend high school. His wife stayed with the children, while Gao worked as a laborer in Baotou. For years, he traveled back and forth, committing murders, then going home like nothing had happened. Even during the height of the investigation, when police were collecting DNA and fingerprints from thousands of men, they never reached Gao. His village was remote, and every time police visited, he simply avoided them. To his neighbors, he was a kind and gentle man. He cared for his paralyzed father with great devotion, once even biking 30 kilometers at night to buy medicine. To the hairdresser next door, Gao seemed like a shy schoolteacher. He barely spoke, kept to himself. No one suspected a thing. In April 2017, after nearly 3 decades, prosecutors finally filed charges. Gao was charged with murder, rape, robbery, desecration of corpses. On July 18, 2017, the trial began at Baiyin Intermediate People's Court. Because the crimes involved sensitive details and minors, the court held a closed-door hearing. Prosecutors laid it all out. From 1988 to 2002, Gao had selected women at random, followed them home, and murdered them, often after assaulting and mutilating their bodies. In total, 11 women died at his hands, including a child. 10 of those murders happened in Baiyin, 1 in Baotou. After 8 months, the verdict was announced. Gao Chengyong was found guilty on all charges. He was sentenced to death, with all assets seized. Before the sentence was carried out, Gao apologized to the victims' families. He bowed his head, but his family still couldn't believe it. His wife never attended the trial. She was too ashamed, too traumatized to face the victims' families. In January 2019, the Supreme People's Court upheld the ruling. Gao Chengyong was executed in Baiyin at the age of 54. And just like that, the ghost of Baiyin was gone. But the pain he left behind? That never faded. 28 years. That's how long it took. Enough time for a child to grow up. For generations of students to pass through the very school where Gao ran his little store. All that time, the families of the victims lived in grief, in silence, in torment. This case is not just a story of evil, but of the tireless effort to bring darkness to light. Behind every solved case lies decades of pain, of loss, of broken families. And behind every monster is a mask. And sometimes that mask looks just like your neighbor. Let's never forget them. And let's never stop learning how to protect each other. Because evil doesn't vanish. It hides.